Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we take one final look at the Eagles' upcoming Monday night matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. Is it a joint revenge game between Justin Jefferson and Jalen Reagor? We take a look at Jalen Hurts' matchup and our second week of LOE3 presented by BetOnline. All that and more coming up on this Friday edition of your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Friday edition of the show. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before because BetOnline is where the game starts. I'm Louis DiBiase. You can follow me on Twitter at LockedOnBirds and at DiBiaseLOE. You can find the show Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. The Eagles have a big game coming up on Monday night against the 1-0 Minnesota Vikings, a team that's really had their number since the Eagles went off on them in the 2018 NFC Championship game, 38-7. Definitely would trade those regular season losses away in a heartbeat for that NFC title win. But it's a game the Eagles, for many different reasons, need to get a win because of, to prove many different things, I think, on both sides of the football. But it's going to be a motivating game for both teams, not because of just, week two. It's a very important game against two very similar teams, I would say, on similar tiers, but also feels a little personal, right? I mean, we heard yesterday Jalen Reagor thinks this is a revenge game. Justin Jefferson plays the Eagles for the first time since he was drafted in 2020, the pick right after the Eagles took Reagor. I think Jefferson, as he said today to the media, and most thought he was going to be wearing midnight green for his NFL career and surprisingly fell to that next pick to Minnesota. So it's going to be a personal game in that way. We know the beef between Eagles and Vikings fans because of that NFC Championship game. Vikings fans tried to totally take over the Rocky steps and put a skirt on Rocky's statue. Then Eagles fans at the stadium troll the living hell out of Minnesota fans because of that. Was an all-out war. So we know about that beef going back and forth between two very passionate fan bases. It's going to be a great, super fun night on Monday. The season opener is going to be, it's always one of the most electric days of the year. Going to be awesome for guys like Jordan Davis to take that in for the first time, Nakobe Dean, James Bradbury, Kazir White. A.J. Brown talked about it today, how excited he is to be caught up in that moment. Going to be a great day. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a weird, joint revenge game where the guy that you didn't take is also now best friends with the guy you did take, but it didn't work out. It's almost like if the toxic ex became friends with the one that got away, right? The one that maybe you friend zoned in high school, and now looking back, you regret it, and they had that glow up, and they're with somebody else now, and maybe they're successful with that other person. A very weird dynamic between Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson, who are now teammates coming to Philadelphia. Reagor talked about it being a revenge game for him yesterday, and I don't get that at all. I guess I understand because of the beef he had, the back and forth sputes of just disdain him and Eagles fans had at each other back and forth on social media for years, but I don't understand trying to get revenge on the Eagles. Revenge for what? I understand next week why Carson Wentz is going to want to get revenge on the Eagles. I understand why Justin Jefferson even would have more skin in this game than Reagor. I'm not sure. It's not like he was screwed over in Philadelphia. It's not like they never gave him an opportunity. It's not like they set him up to fail. The Eagles believed in him so much that they took him over Justin Jefferson, who is maybe seen now as the best wide receiver in the entire NFL. So I'm not quite sure why Reagor is looking for revenge. The Eagles gave him more opportunities than he deserved for 2 years. They played him unconditionally despite never showing any sort of signs that he could be the guy that was worth that first-round pick in 2020. So for Reagor, I don't get it. Yes, fans were brutal towards him and maybe unforgiving at times, but it's tougher to side with Reagor as opposed to guys like Wentz in the past, or, even if anybody got on Markelle Fultz back in the day with the 76ers or Donovan McNabb, you can relate to those guys more and understand why they would be beefing with fans and not feel, totally supported in the city of brotherly love, so to speak. But for Reagor, it's kind of more like the Ben Simmons side, where Eagles fans were right to go after this guy. He never really held himself accountable. He was really bad. The work ethic was a question mark. Jason Avant even said that a few weeks ago. He was a part of that coaching staff back in 2020 when Reagor was a rookie. So I don't get the whole Reagor revenge part. Justin Jefferson, totally get it. Justin Jefferson has more of a play here for a revenge kind of narrative than Reagor does. The Eagles said to Justin Jefferson, we think, and Howie Roseman said this himself on Sports Radio 94 WIP in an interview right after they traded Reagor to Minnesota, that he thought Justin Jefferson, he didn't say this word for word, but what he said was he thought at the time, after the 2019 season, the Eagles had a bunch of really good possession pass catchers over the middle of the field. 2 tight ends in Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Greg Ward was coming off a very impressive playoff run down the stretch. What did the Eagles need desperately? They needed speed, and they needed boundary receivers, X and Z players, as pass catchers on the outside. They did not, and a lot of people didn't think Justin Jefferson was that guy coming out of LSU. I myself, and it was very wrong, but I myself also thought Jefferson was a guy that was mostly going to be making his money in the slot as a possession guy. Wasn't sure about his ability to separate at the next level. And God, were we all wrong. Justin Jefferson proved that to be wrong from the jump, from the start of his career in 2020. So I get why Jefferson would be a guy that would want to go after Philadelphia on Monday night, kind of like DK Metcalf was motivated back in 2019 and 2020. He destroyed Philadelphia. The Eagles passed on him for J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. So a guy that got taken, that got passed over, I think you can make the spin of a revenge narrative more for that guy than Jalen Reagor, when all Philadelphia did was give this kid opportunities time after time. It is wild, though, by the way, to see how good Justin Jefferson is, because I was very adamant about not wanting him. And it's crazy that Howie Roseman and probably the majority of the Eagles front office agreed with my take about it. And as he said on WIP, they wanted speed on the boundary. For the record, though, Howie kind of talked about having too much tunnel vision in that moment, how now it's about taking just the best player overall and not putting too much emphasis on, specific traits or college production or scheme fit, which I totally get. I said that as well. It's part of why they've been able to have such really good draft classes the last 2 years. But for the record, I don't think that our thought process, Howie's, myself, a lot of you listeners, felt that way at the time. Even if you deny it now, you probably thought the same thing. I think it is fair, though, just because this time it didn't work, I think it's fair to have those thoughts, because back in the day at LSU, Jefferson really did mostly produce in the slot. There wasn't a lot of film to know what he could do as an X receiver. Sure, there should have been physical traits and, his mental processing and how he is in the film room and on the whiteboard. That all should have told you that he was going to translate to the next level. But there wasn't a lot of film to really know that he could be the guy that Philadelphia desperately needed, because we all know at the time, it was true then. Philadelphia badly needed speed. They were one of the slowest offenses in the NFL, not even just with the injuries in 2019. Even when Alshon Jeffrey was out there and Nelson Aguilar, Deshaun Jackson couldn't stay healthy. Nelly regressed significantly. That team was slow and old. So I understand the thought process. I think they definitely got too caught up in it for sure because of the clear gap between Reagor and Jefferson when it comes to strength of prospects. But I think it is smart for a team during their draft process to have those things factor into the equation. Yes, it shouldn't have drove the result as much as it did for Philadelphia. They got significant tunnel vision on that speed factor that they clearly overlooked superior prospects, not just Jefferson, but guys like Brandon Ayuk, T. Higgins as well. The list goes on and on. Gabriel Davis was later on in that draft class. But at the same time, I don't think that having those thoughts is overly bad. I think the bigger issue with passing on Justin Jefferson was simply that, like I said, they misjudged what these prospects could do. Jefferson was so much more than what I, and many of us projected. And Jalen Reagor was so much less. It's kind of ironic that Reagor was the one at the next level that really couldn't separate. But it's a huge what if in Eagles history. They've got it right now. It's easier to have this conversation now, knowing that they have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, because if not, the last 2 years, it's been hard to swallow watching Jefferson tear up in Minnesota, especially knowing what that kind of cost them. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sure if they took Justin Jefferson, if that would have saved Carson Wentz's career, because in that scenario, they still take Jalen Hurts. And I'm not sure if that pick would have did Carson in no matter what. I actually put that to a poll. 52% of my listeners said that they think Wentz was doomed regardless, even if they took Jefferson. But 48% of people said they think Jefferson could have saved Wentz's career. It's really tough to say. And it's why I focus more on the what if of they should have traded up for CeeDee Lamb, because you could have used that second round pick that you used on Hurts to go get CeeDee. But I think Wentz in 2020 badly needed receiver help. And you saw flashes of Carson early on in the year still show signs of that good quarterback he was the previous 4 seasons. Things spiraled so fast in the middle of the season. Maybe if he had Justin Jefferson, it would have been different. You know, it's a massive what if in Eagles history, and it's a lot easier to talk about now, though, because damn it, did Howie Roseman avenge that horrible draft pick. But for Justin Jefferson, I think he's still going to be looking to stick it to the Eagles, and even though it's not justified, Jalen Reagor is too. I want to get into the other side of the football, though, coming up next. You know, we were focusing on the Vikings and their offense there with those 2 pass catchers, the one that got away and the toxic X, if you will, with Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson. But I want to talk about Jalen Hurts' matchup against this defense coming up next. I think it's a really good test for Jalen as we continue to watch just how big of a step he's taken in year 3. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's show is sponsored by Turo. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., Canada, and the U.K. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthdays, holidays. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from point A to point B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on and see how it fits your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions do apply. Ditch the boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. All right, Eagles fans, welcome back into this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. I'm Louis DiBiase. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We are getting you ready for a Monday night matchup between the 1-0 Philadelphia Eagles and the 1-0 Minnesota Vikings. It's the season opener, I should say the home opener at Lincoln Financial Field. And it's a really good test for Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, I thought, took a really nice first step against the Detroit Lions. He was extremely accurate in the pocket. I thought he stood in there more than he would have in the past. PFF said he was the most accurate quarterback throwing beyond the sticks. He was actually the 4th overall quarterback when it comes to QBR inside the pocket. He had to run, and he made Detroit pay with 90 rushing yards on the ground and a touchdown. Had that 50-yard bomb to A.J. Brown, made some tight window throws, was really good on 3rd and 4th down. Overall, a great start to Jalen's season in a really tough road environment with a team that was giving him everything they had, and the protection was not great. He was getting his butt kicked. A very impressive performance from the 3rd-year quarterback. But I think this game against Minnesota is going to be an even bigger test, because I think it's going to test more that Lions game. Again, there were a lot of things that I liked, but at the same time, it really emphasized his mobility because Hurts had to run. Detroit pressured him on 38% of his dropbacks. They hit him 20 times, which, as you heard on the show this week, was the most of any quarterback when it comes to hits taken week 1. So it really kind of just continued to emphasize the elite trait that he already had. That's what the Eagles needed to win that football game and score 38 points on the road. But against Minnesota, now the areas that he needed to improve the most are going to be emphasized, because unlike the Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings are not going to blitz Jalen that much. Aaron Rodgers said it on the Pat McAfee show this week. The Vikings brought mostly four-man pressures 99% of the time in their Sunday win against the Packers. They also play a lot of zone coverage, and they do it really well. So listen to these stats from the Vikings during week 1. They actually ran zone coverage the second most of any team week 1 at 95.2% of the time. Only the Seahawks ran zone more with 97.9 against the Denver Broncos on Monday night. By the way, Minnesota's zone coverage, they had the highest percentage when it comes to, I should say, they led the NFL when it comes to the least amount of coverage mistakes. The Vikings, their true coverage rate was 94.16% last week. That was the number one coverage team per PFF in all of the NFL. So that's a really good test for Jalen and the steps that we hope he has taken this offseason inside of the pocket. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be clean. They have Zadarius Smith. They have Donnell Hunter. They have a good four-man pass rush for sure. But we know the Eagles have an elite offensive line. He's going to have more time against this Vikings four-man rush probably than when the Lions were blitzing him. So it's going to be a great test to see if Jalen does not need to run as much as he did against the Lions, if he will, right? It's going to be really interesting to see if Minnesota's throwing him these disguise looks, where the pressure is coming from, on top of the zone coverage, sorting through the holes in the defense, where the open guys are going to be, throwing with anticipation, throwing in tighter windows, which they're going to be tighter. Minnesota is a better secondary. It's not overly, filled with star power. Patrick Peterson's old. Harrison Smith's getting up there. Still a good safety, but, it's not the 2018 secondary that the Eagles saw in the NFC title, but it's going to be tougher. This is going to be more of a game for Jalen where it's going to emphasize his passing ability within the pocket, right? Making decisions with pocket presence, with anticipation, when to throw, when to run. Can he consistently dissect the zone coverage and make those right decisions, right? That's going to be really interesting to watch because that is really where his weaknesses were last year. If you look at that playoff loss, the blowout playoff loss against Tampa Bay, what the Buccaneers did really, most of the time they sent a four-man rush, but it was coming from different areas. They were disguising things. They were getting Jalen to think a lot as a passer, to anticipate and to diagnose, and then to make really tough throws. And I think that's what he's going to have to do on Monday night against Minnesota, but he's got the weapons, and I saw some good signs again against Detroit. He had the fourth highest QBR inside the pocket. He was accurate. I saw the mental clock moving a lot faster. So now, when maybe he needs to stay in the pocket more to win the game, I want to see if now that the volume is going to increase when it comes to the amount of times he's going to have to do that stuff within the pocket. Now I want to see if that efficiency will continue. Let's really see the progress that Jalen made over the course of the offseason. That's going to be a fun test because it's something we need to know Jalen can do when he has to at this level if he wants to be the long-term quarterback. All right, guys, coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles, we are going to get into our second week of LOE3. I'm going to try to get you 3 Eagles-related bets in this Monday night matchup against the Minnesota Vikings that you need to put your money on. I know we went 2-4 last week. I plan to avenge you guys this week against Minnesota. And guys, today's show is sponsored by the sports book that's bringing you LOE3. It's BetOnline. BetOnline.net, they're your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports information this season. Find all the latest developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including the Eagles and Vikings Monday night matchup this Monday night. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. You can bet on the MLB as well, the MMA, boxing, golf. You need it. You name it. Head over to betonline.net. Use the website on your mobile device or your computer to learn more about the trends in action because BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Eagles fans, we are wrapping up this Friday edition of Locked On Eagles. Thank you so much for making LOE your first listen each and every day. All right, so if you don't listen to the show before, if this is your first listen to Locked On Eagles, first of all, thank you so much. But second of all, every Friday during the season, my co-host Gino Camilleri and I, through our sportsbook BetOnline, we give you LOE3. It's our 3 bets that we hammer for each Eagles game that we want you to ride with us, because riders ride, and you are going to try to win some money with us. Last week, I say try because betting is tough. And, I'm going to try to get you a W, but it's never a guarantee. But have confidence in me. Last year, we were 12 shares over. So we ended up in the positive. We were in the green last year. So we didn't start off well on Sunday against Detroit because Gino and I both had the over on Devontae Smith receiving yards and the over on Quez Watkins receiving yards. Neither one registered a single catch. So we both lost that. So we were both 0-2 for a combined record of 0-4. But we both did win our other bets. He got the over on Jalen Hurts passing yards, and then I won the over on Miles Sanders rushing yards. So we finished 2-4 on the week. We're going to try to rebound here and finish over 500 against Minnesota. Here are my 3 bets that I'm riding with in Eagles-Vikings presented by BetOnline.net. Number 1, I'm taking the over on 50.5 combined points between the Eagles and the Vikings. These are 2 very talented offenses that score a lot of points. It's a star-studded matchup, really. Not when it comes to quarterbacks, good, not great players right now, but both guys have shown with these weapons they can put up points at will. You've got Justin Jefferson, you've got Dalvin Cook, you've got Adam Thielen, you've got A.J. Brown, you've got Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, Quez Watkins. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored. Are both defenses talented? Yeah, absolutely. But the Eagles consistently show they can put up points against the best of them. Maybe not through the passing game as much, but last year they showed they can score points at will. And, I'm hoping the Eagles bounce back on defense, but I am not feeling very confident in Jonathan Gannon. Last week, he finally has the personnel where he doesn't need to play that soft kind of defense with, suspect situational play calling, too much soft zone coverage, the least amount of blitz packages dialed up across the NFL week 1. Very frustrating considering the 4-man pass rush was not winning. I'm just starting to think, and I know it's way too early to come up with this assumption already, but I'm starting to doubt and maybe think that this is who Gannon is. And it's very frustrating because I thought, he kind of coaches as if he has, like in a secondary, for instance. He was coaching as if he was trying to protect his secondary rather than his 4-man pass rush, his defensive line that was not getting the job done against the run or getting to Jared Goff. He should have been sending pressure. He should have been playing press man coverage and buying those guys up front more time. But he made it seem like he was coaching Kerry Williams back there, Bradley Fletcher, Nate Allen, and Kurt Coleman or Jaquan Jarrett. James Bradbury was on lockdown last game. He was one of the best corners in the entire NFL last week. Darius Slay, he gave up that touchdown to DJ Chark, but it was a near perfect throw by Jared Goff. Darius Slay was locked down last week. Avonte Maddox barely got beat the entire game. I thought Marcus Epps had the best game of his career. I thought Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, considering he was only with the team for a week and a half, looked really good. The way Jonathan Gannon was coaching makes me scared now that they're playing an even more talented team against Minnesota. Hopefully they adjust against the run, against the pass. They just simply tackle better. But the over-under is 50.5 combined. I think the Eagles are going to score north of 21, 24 points. Do you think Minnesota's going to score north of 21? I think so, probably. I think this is maybe going to be a shootout. And I believe in the Eagles' personnel on the field on defense, but again, I'm going to hammer the over. And that doesn't mean that they have to score, Minnesota has to score 30. Maybe it means that the Eagles score, 30 plus points again, like they did last week. And the defense does hold their own and Minnesota scores a garbage time point. But I think it's a better bet with the talent on this team right now, the way offenses have been consistently in the NFL, and the way the Eagles defense looked last week. I'm going to hammer that over on 50.5 combined points. Then number 2, I know I lost you that bet last week with Devontae Smith. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to double down on number 6, and I think he's going to score 6 on Sunday. I am making a bet on Devontae Smith as an anytime touchdown scorer in that game. A lot of the time, when a star pass catcher or just a weapon overall does not get the ball in a game at all, that was the first time Devontae Smith did not have a catch. Last week against Detroit was the first time in college or the NFL where Devontae Smith did not have a catch in a game. Yeah, isn't that crazy? Devontae Smith is not going to do that again this week. I think they're going to emphasize getting him involved early and often. He's not going to only see 4 targets. I think Minnesota is going to put extra emphasis on stopping A.J. Brown, and I think Devontae Smith is going to score a touchdown in this football game. I'm doubling down on Devontae because he is a star at this level, and it's only a matter of time before he blows up. Then number 3, I'm going to go back to the win I got last week, and that was with number 26, RB1 Miles Sanders, but it's not going to be rushing yards this time. It's not even going to be an anytime touchdown scorer. He got his touchdown last week. Maybe he scores again, but I'm going to take the over on Miles Sanders receptions. As I said in the second segment, I think there's going to be an added emphasis by Minnesota to at least try to keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket. And that's the thing. You're never going to fully contain Jalen. He's a top 3 mobile quarterback in the NFL. I think the only guys I'd rather have based on mobility, the ability to escape and make plays outside of structure, are Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, most likely. I even like Jalen better than Kyler Murray in that way. But again, there will be an overemphasis by Minnesota to try to keep him locked in there. And if Jalen processes things as fast as he did last week against Detroit and make the right decisions and throw an accurate ball, I think Miles Sanders will hit the over on his receptions. I want them to try, and they didn't do it last week. I said on the show a few weeks ago, I want them to try to get Miles Sanders more downfield like they did in 2019. Let's see if they can get him matched up with some linebackers, maybe some 21 personnel to create some mismatches. That would be interesting to see this Monday and try to switch things up. I'm going to hammer the over on Miles Sanders receptions. Last week, he had 2 catches. I think he's going to have more than that on Monday. Will be interesting. Hopefully I win you guys more money this week. We finished 2-4 last week. We'll have Gino's LOE 3 as well on Monday. So we'll have his 3 bets as well, because BetOnline is where the game starts. You can bet on all these player parlays, the over-unders, game props, all at betonline.net. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. We will see you guys Monday after the game. Eagles-Vikings at 8:30. Very weird the way the NFL did it. They're having the Buffalo Bills, Tennessee Titans game on an hour before that. So 2 really good games are going to be on at the same time. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but we're going to be watching the Birds. We'll see you after the game. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Hit us up on Twitter at Locked On Birds and at DiBiase LOE. We thank you for making LOE your first listen each and every day. Make sure your second listen is the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.